Good day, everyone online. Can you please confirm whether you can hear us? Maybe you can put it in the chat. Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much. We are just waiting maybe 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will start. Thank you all for being here today. Our online just say no to make sure that you can hear you in your room. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Perfect. We can hear you, so we will start. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We were worried, actually, 4 o'clock session, would we have colleagues in the room? But thank you so much for your interest in the topic and commitment to mental health and psychosocial support. My name is Fahmi Hanna, and I'm based at WHO headquarters in Geneva at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Use, and also the co-chair, the Interagency Standing Committee Reference Group on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support and Emergency. Welcome to our session today on Interagency Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Rapid Deployments, which is co-hosted RBO, the Dutch Enterprise Agency, and the IASC Reference Group. I introduced my colleague, Carmen, then we hand over to Ms. Mervet Shilbaya for opening remarks of this session. Over to you, Carmen.
Thank you so much, Fahmi. Good afternoon, and thank you, colleagues online and everybody in the room for joining us indeed at 4 p.m. I hope you got coffees. My name is Carmen Valle, and I work for the PS Center, the Center of Reference for Mental Health and Psychosocial Support of the Federation of the Red Cross. And I'm the other co-chair of the reference group, and Fahmi and I are really happy to have this conversation today about our search mechanisms thanks to RBO.
Thank you, Carmen. In blue color, you will find the IASC logo. So the IASC MHPSS reference group is not free-floating in the humanitarian system, and we are very proud to be under the umbrella of the Interagency Standing Committee and to have today giving the opening remarks ahead of the Interagency Standing Committee. Ms. Mervet Shilbaya, thank you for your support, your leadership and commitment for MHPSS, and over to you.
Thanks a million, Dr. Fahmi. Thanks a million, Carmen and colleagues. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I hope colleagues online can also hear me clearly. Colleagues at the back of the room, can you hear me as well? I'll honestly say, Dr. Fahmi and Carmen, that really the big thanks goes to you and of course your leadership of the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Reference Group, and also the amazing number of organizations, some of which are members of the Interagency Standing Committee, many others aren't, that have been really instrumental in supporting the work around mental health and psychosocial support over the years. And I always use the mental health and psychosocial support reference group as really the role model and the golden standard for many of the IT structures that we have in terms of the proactiveness, particularly with regards to translating policy to action. And of course, as you all know, I would hope that you all know, a number of years ago, I think it must have been 10 or 15 years ago, 15 years ago, the MHPSS guidelines were issued. But these are guidelines, it's a framework.
Yeah.
The challenge is always around how you translate policy to practice. And it's something that we're continuously face within the realm of the IASC, whether it's around translating gender policies to action, whether it's translating protection commitments to action, whether it's translating AAP commitments and policies and frameworks and guidelines to action. So just to say, I'm really, really, really privileged to be here, to have had the chance over the past number of years to learn from Dr. Fahmy and from Carmen around the importance of MHPSS, because I will confess, I myself was also quite naive in terms of the extent to which it is important for the system, for the sector to do more in support of vulnerable communities around the world, because we're seeing it. We're seeing it all around the world, whether it's in Gaza or Ukraine or in Sudan or DRC, and horrible, horrible statistics in terms of the suffering that people, of course, are experiencing because of loss of family members, loss of homes, displacement, abuse, whether it's physical or emotional. So these are real issues. But of course, as a community, and this is something that's not just specific to the humanitarian sector, but it's also specific to the world in general. We only look at physical trauma or physical pain, but the emotional ones, as we all know, and I hope everyone online and everyone here is familiar enough with the topic more than I was a few years ago. These are deeper traumas that people experience, and that are not obvious, that are not vivid, but it doesn't mean that they're not real, and that have long-lasting repercussions and trauma that people live with for the rest of their lives if it's not dealt with, of course, in the right way. Many years ago, when I was with the World Food Program, I was in Afghanistan, and I remember taking a course on to be amongst the first group of colleagues in WFP to receive colleagues that have faced any kind of trauma in Afghanistan. So it was sort of a preparedness, unit to make sure that, again, there is an opportunity for colleagues to speak immediately once they face a trauma, because it's important as soon as you face a trauma to really talk about it and, share it when you first experience it. I don't know the science behind it, but there's value and there's critical importance in doing so. Now we have contexts all around the world, and we see it again in many of the contexts, including Gaza, that unfortunately we're experiencing at the moment, the horrible attacks that are happening as we're speaking in Rafah, but also this terrible gender-based violence that is happening as we're sitting here in places like DRC. And unfortunately, vulnerable communities are experiencing these horrific acts, these horrific violations, these horrific protection challenges, and they don't have the support that they so very much need. So the reason why, again, I'm a big fan of the mental health and psychosocial support reference group is indeed because of that. Because although the policy has been done 15 years ago, you have spent the past decade and a half, and even more so in the past number of years, to really be at the forefront with yourselves, again, as role models, but also with the membership of the MHPSS reference group, to be in the field, to help set up the MHPSS technical groups. And I understand at the moment there are 60 of them. So on the rise. So this is very welcome. It's very much appreciated, because where the rubber hits the road, as we all know, it is not in Geneva, it's not in Rome, it's not in New York. It is, in the field. So thank you for really doing your work with heart, with conviction. That's what we all need to do, and we learn from you, because the needs, as we all know, are tremendous. So there's a whole. I can sit here for an hour to talk about the great work, of course, that our reference group in the IASC is doing. But again, just to say, I'm so glad again, and with the support of the Dutch government, and I know the Dutch government today, but also ex-Minister Kaag in the past. Sigrid Kaag was a big champion for MHPSS over the years, and it's with thanks to the support of the Dutch government that, of course, the surge mechanism was established and was launched in 2020. And it's about time, and I'm glad to see that there are at least 50 deployments, so 60 technical work groups of 50 deployments currently on the ground, and so I'm looking forward, of course, to hearing how the technical groups are working, how the surge mechanism is working, and I'm hoping that a lot of the colleagues that are online and here are not only those who are familiar with the issue, but those who come from other sectors and from other thematic areas, because all of these issues are quite interlinked and we learned quite a bit. But maybe the last word to say on the work of the reference group, in addition to the surge mechanism, which is of course the topic for today's discussion, is also around how you've looked at the sort of the Bible of the policy on MHPSS and humanitarian crises, and you've adapted it to different target groups. So you've translated this guidance to make sure that it caters to health workers in the ministries of health, to the health cluster, to the protection cluster, so to the humanitarian coordinators. And that's precisely the type of example that we want to see in other sectors and thematic areas as well. So just to say, really, the big thanks goes to you, Dr. Fahmy and Carmen, and all of your members of the reference group. And I very much look forward to the discussions. Thank you. Thanks.
You just mentioned something critical, which is we could have not done this without the support of the Netherlands, and we're very happy to have today the representation in the permanent mission here. So over to you and André and Nurse from the representation in Geneva. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you, Dr. Fahmy, for co-chairing the reference group, but especially for inviting me here, and thank you, Mervat, for being so enthusiastic about the group and its work. I had actually prepared something that I was going to say, sit there and then say something, but now I'm sitting here, which is also very nice. Personally, maybe anecdotally, when I showed interest in the position here at the mission in Geneva, there was a whole selection process, and the last thing that was to decide whether it was going to be me or somebody else was we had to answer questions on MHPSS, which at that time with Minister Kaas was indeed, it was right after the October, the summit in Amsterdam. I gave the right answer about it being life-saving, but also with a longer term impact in terms of people being able to also rebuild their societies after crisis. So this just to show how important it is for the Dutch government and has been ever since. What I'm really here for today is sort of a shout out about the search support and sort of publicizing that and saying how important that is. Mostly in terms of coordination and coordinating in the field, a topic which is not necessarily with one or the other agency, and that makes coordination more important because it needs to bring those different, the sector together. So in that respect, search support very important, those 50 surges. Also because it brings together sort of all the levels of psychosocial support, mental health. There's different agencies have different expertise, etc. And it's that pyramid of sort of the psychosocial support, bringing that together, also something that we can do with search. Let me just look at my notes here. A little duty of care, not only about the people that we are helping, but also about the people that are helping people, and that also need to have their mental well-being looked after. And there too, the search sort of has been very important. So all this to say that, and I'm going to keep it very short, that we are very proud of this program. We are very keen on continuing it, but more importantly, we are also hoping that we can expand it with the help of other donors, etc. And later this year, I think we will have a meeting on that and try to get others on board so that we can grow it even further. and maybe go, multiply the 50 to a larger extent. And just to be clear, it's a Dutch program, but in the search support, there is experts from all over the globe, and a good basis to expand on that. So thank you for that, and forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think as we heard from the IC Secretariat and as we heard from the permanent mission of the Netherlands, I think it's clear the answer is mental health and psychosocial support need to be integrated into our humanitarian response and humanitarian program cycle. But let's go to the first slide, please. Why do we have mental health and psychosocial support as a cross-cutting group within the ISC? Why MHPSS is important? MHPSS is important because it's not a luxury. Humans, including in big emergencies, such as what we have in Gaza, what we have in Sudan, what we have in Ukraine, humans survive need beyond water and food and shelter. Human need dignity, respect, and ability to cope with emergencies. WHO has used always the slogan of no health without mental health. I think there can be no humanitarian response without mental health and psychosocial support. The term was coined through the IC, through the Interagency Standing Committee, through the guidelines of 2007, as Mr. Shilbaya has kindly shared with us. But since that time, we continue releasing various tools. The minimum service package funded by the Netherlands tell us and make the mental health and psychosocial support across sectors costed and more predictable and more evidence-based and more able to be measured. Is MHPSS about disorders? No. MHPSS is beyond disorder. MHPSS is about protection and promotion of psychosocial well-being and about treatment and care for mental health conditions as well. We cannot ignore people with mental health needs, and at the same time, people with mental health and psychosocial needs, such as psychological distress, would benefit from mental health and psychosocial support. People who need integration of mental health and psychosocial support approach at level 1 of the pyramid. The way we set up the camp, the way you distribute the food so we ensure people are not fighting with one another while they're getting the food is an MHPSS approach. The way we support the community to get back and able to cope, such as with safe spaces for children, sports for adolescents, is a mental health and psychosocial support. These are not people with mental disorder, but people who benefit from support of the humanitarian system to be able to cope. We put here interventions such as focused psychosocial support, such as counseling services, for example. But then a small percentage, we estimate as 1 in 5, would have a mental health condition that require care and management, either by a specialist or by those who are trained through specialists to scale up the service. Wide range of tools was developed and released through the ISC, including a monitoring and evaluation framework to measure collective impact, a handbook to coordinate MHPSS across sector, a guide to let us know how to deal also with MHPSS in preparedness and readiness. Next, please.
Thank you so much. And we were just having a glimpse of the complexity, and we have all of those levels of the pyramid. We have organizations that we work very specifically in child-friendly spaces, organizations that will be delivering services in tertiary institutions, organizations that will be taking care of rights of persons with mental health and psychosocial disabilities. It takes a lot of coordination, as it was being said by Andre, and that work is being done at the ground, at the country level. I think one of the successes of translating that policy into operational work is that we are working very closely with our colleagues at country level to connect them to what is happening at the global level. And we really, those resources that Fahmi was mentioning, they're not resources that the reference group decides to do. They are resources that the ground is telling us, please, we need something about this when we're not sure how to do monitoring and evaluation of mental health and psychosocial support. And then we come together to produce those resources and to keep on delivering at country level. Who does that? 62 member agencies are right now part of the reference group, and that covers the UN agencies, NGOs, local NGOs. It covers as well many observers that can be academia, members of the donor organizations, and so on. So we are going to jointly work together to make sure that global and country level talk to each other and are well connected.
In good humanitarian practice, you may find within education sector, a colleague working in an agency such as Save the Children, for example. Since many of the mental health condition and needs started during childhood, during school age, doing school mental health promotion. In good humanitarian practice, you may find a colleague sitting with UNFPA, doing within gender-based violence area of responsibility, some mental health and psychosocial support integration into survivors of gender-based violence. In good humanitarian practice, you may find someone deployed with International Medical Corps doing mental health integration into general healthcare. Into nutrition with ACF doing mental health integration or behavioral integration for children with severe malnutrition. This area is about services. It's not only a thematic area where we need to make sure that it's disaggregated across sector, it's a service. But then you have the dilemma, how to make sure that this area where there are services into all the AORs and all the clusters is coordinated and not fragmented. 15 years ago with the MHPSS guidelines, the humanitarian actors agree that this area is cross-cutting with one cross-cutting. Classically before, there would be two groups, one mental health, one psychosocial. This is a bad practice according to the IASC guidance, according to the handbook of MHPSS coordination, according to the minimum service package, which was just released. There are 60 now of these groups, but with increased number of groups, we need to support them. Next, please.
Indeed, and you can imagine, if you just look at those 60 groups and you imagine a reference group before 2020 without a search mechanism, that meant that the co-chairs might need to be on the road constantly, and you could only support so many. There's only so much that we could do on the ground when we didn't have the search mechanism. Our colleagues from RVO are going to tell us after our presentation how this process happens. How do we get from the identification of the need into having a person down on the ground doing MHPSS coordination? But I wanted to bring a little bit of attention on some of our numbers. In 2020, we got established as a search mechanism. Since then, we've done 52 deployments in all of the major emergencies that we have, but also in very forgotten ones. We've been deploying in Gaza, yes. We've been deploying in Ukraine, yes. But we've been deploying in Colombia. We've been deploying in Venezuela and in Chad, and making sure that we listen where the needs are. 39 countries have received so far some of our deployments, and those deployments are hosted by agencies on the ground. 5 agencies so far have hosted our deployments. UN agencies, but also NGOs such as ACF, and very recently with the Save the Children will be hosting some of our deployees. We have a database of more than 300 members. And I would like to just share how wonderful that database is. This database is full of colleagues from multiple countries, with multiple language skills, with multiple backgrounds. We are not deploying colleagues, as I was saying, it's not Dutch colleagues going and being deployed. It's actually a very diverse database that allows us to identify what is more needed in those contexts. And if we need a specific need on language or a specific need on a technical specialty, we have that capacity. What happens other than what you're going to hear later on how the mechanism happens, there's a role that we have to play with our colleagues from RBO. We have a unique opportunity to have the capacity of a standby partner to deploy colleagues on the ground and the technical support that the reference group can provide. So we will be working together in making sure that that person from beginning to the end has all of the necessary support to be there and do their work, but also to have technical expertise, to have regular mentoring and supervision, and so on. We started with a very strong coordination focus. It was very important to strengthen coordination at country level. But as you'll notice in this area, more and more we've been requested to deploy other types of expertise. And right now we are at the moment of expanding the database. We have a colleague identify and actively members with different expertises, so we can deploy for rapid assessments, or we can deploy for mappings, or maybe there's a specific issue around substance use or around suicide, and we need an expert to provide much more tailored expertise. All of that is coming together to make sure that we have enough type of expertise that we can deploy to all sorts of contexts. Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. We have 60 groups. Back in 2019, just before COVID, we used to have 23 countries with coordination mechanism. This is more than double. I think the surge mechanism has successfully strengthened the MHPSS coordination at country level because it provided supply which created a demand. I don't think we would have an MHPSS technical working group in Djibouti unless we have the surge mechanism. I don't really think we would have received a request from Burkina Faso unless we would have the surge mechanism. I think the supply created a demand for countries with no resources, and gradually the mechanism turned to be a mechanism for filling gaps, particularly in forgotten emergencies. I'm just back from Chad in January, and the mechanism has successfully helped in creating a coordination mechanism in Eastern Chad in response to the emergency. But yes, from 23 countries to 60 countries in around 3 to 4 years. But the dilemma is not solved. This field is not having coordinators because we don't have human resource. When you start creating a mechanism to deploy rapidly people in mental health, you need at the same time to start building the capacity of this rare asset. In historical times, the reason we developed the surge is that it was only 2 people, the 2 co-chairs of the reference group, traveling to all countries of the world. That's not sustainable. We needed a surge mechanism for having these 300 people in the roster, but at the same time, you need continuously to invest in building their capacity. So this is an example, a photo for one of our most recent trainings in Tunis, and people learn by doing. These trainings usually don't have many lectures or any lectures in most of the cases. This is pictures for people doing tabletop simulation exercise that mimic a deployment. People passing from stations using role play, using professional actors to mimic a situation where they integrate mental health and psychosocial support into humanitarian response. They do problem solving using software that we have adapted with colleagues, and we put them in situations that mimic situation. We learn it through the 4 years that they are going to face. And we select multi-sectoral trainers from various sectors to ensure that this is not only about one sector or one area of work. If you go next, please. Thank you, Maya. We will hear from colleagues who are now deployed, and colleagues who had the experience of getting deployed, but a picture worth more than 1,000 words. These are pictures from some of the recent deployments during the last year. This is a mental health and psychosocial support group in Niger. As you see, in a context with very low resources, a deployment hosted by UNHCR. Our colleague, Julie, she is from USA. She had to adapt her intervention and culture into the area of Sinda, just outside Hyderabad, during the floods in Pakistan, an area difficult to reach and get requests for, and she was doing an MHPSS technical working group activation just after the floods. In Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, struggled to find an expert in MHPSS who know about coordination and can speak Portuguese to function in Cabo. We took many weeks with that deployment, and I remember with Heidi, we spent a long time with IOM colleagues looking for the right profile, but we are happy. We sent 2 colleagues. Both of them are actually working with an IOM now. And that's actually one of the outcomes of our deployments. It's success when the agencies start to create a position when there is a deployment. But also it's a challenge for the system because that means the experts that we have trained is out. So it's a secondary outcome, which is very good for the surge mechanism, that it's actually starting to create more attention funded by the agency because the agency don't pay for that deployment. But it's a challenge. I mean, we need to train someone else. Next, please.
Indeed, and more examples. We've had the opportunity very recently to send not 1, but 3 colleagues at the same time to DRC. So they could provide that activation of technical working groups in North Kivu and in South Kivu and to work blindly and working with each other, which has been very, very important. And in Central African Republic, our colleague is still deployed right there, and it's been a very unique opportunity. There's been a severe lack of coordination and a lot of willingness. So our colleagues in CAR are working together. And just the last example from OPT, just before August, in August last year, we finished 2 combined deployments, one inside of Gaza, the other one in the West Bank. They could activate those 2 technical working groups and join them together. Needless to say that technical working group inside of Gaza is now critical for the situation and to coordinate the MHPSS response inside of Gaza. So we are very happy that we could deploy it earlier last year. That's a little bit of what we do. so much. So we promised that we would explain a little bit more how it works. So we have our dear colleague from RBO, Marike, joining us, Marike Hoffman, joining us from online. And she's just going to explain how it happens from this moment of meeting an MHPSS expert until we have the person responding on the ground. So Marike, yes, and thank you so much. Marike, I hope you can hear us. We can definitely see you. Hello. And
Hello,
over
good
to you.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. I hope you can all hear me well. My name is Marijke Hofman and I work at RBO as a program advisor on MHPSS search mechanism. And my colleagues Omer and Sandra are here today online as well. Sandra is the coordinator of our program and Omer and I are responsible for the logistics behind these deployments. And today I would like to explain you a bit more about how this process works. So first of all, it all starts with a request from an organization, and that comes from organizations who are interested in receiving help from us. And this starts all with the ears and eyes from Carmen and Fami. They hear where the needs are the highest, and they really try to connect these organizations with RVO. And from that point, the conversations will start. These conversations are about what help is needed and what can we do for you. And the last years, these deployments have been focusing on coordination, but as Carmen and Fami already described, we will try to experiment with other types of deployments. For example, suicide prevention, elderly people, or more expertise on mapping or monitoring and evaluation. So from that point, we will receive a finalized TOR from the requesting organization, and then we can start with the selection process. And that is the point where we can make use of our database of our roster members. And everyone is able to register themselves in this database. And therefore, you need to have a background in psychology and experience in MHPSS. And then we place this vacancy on our website and we share it with our roster members. And then we receive usually a lot of applications. Usually we have 4 or 5 suitable candidates for that position. Carmen and Fami think with us about which candidate is the most suitable for that position because they know the context very well. And then we share the short list of these candidates with the hosting organization. And in the end, they will choose which candidate they prefer. So once that has been finalized, we can start with the pre-deployment preparations. And that means, of course, a lot of paperwork and some meetings to discuss how we are going to set up the deployment. We as RVO will award the expert a contract and have meetings with, for example, the country office of the hosting agency to discuss when to start and how to make the appointments between each other. After these briefings, the expert will also have stress management training provided by Antares. And Antares is an organization that provides psychosocial support to humanitarian workers. They will also have a presentation after my presentation, so they can tell more about that then. And then we can start. And usually our deployments take about 3 months. So within these 3 months, the experts will be carrying out their activities according to the TOR. And we usually have some contact moments with the experts to see how things are going and Carmen or Fami can be involved as well to support with technical input. And the expert can also contact Antares if there is happening something difficult, if the expert is facing some issues, and then they can discuss it. Because we think it's very important to take care of our experts as well. So then we are almost heading towards the end of the deployment, and sometimes it can be that a request for extension comes in, sometimes not. And in the end, our deployments do not take longer than 6 months. Usually 3 months, sometimes 3 months, 2 weeks. We now have somebody for 6 weeks in Iraq. That varies. And then after the end of the deployment, we have a debriefing to celebrate the successes of the deployment, but also to learn from situations that were difficult. Yeah, and that's when we complete the deployment, and then we hope that the hosting organization will replace the expert for a more permanent MHPSS employer. And in some cases, as Fami already mentioned, it can be that the experts will be hired by the hosting organizations, which we really encourage that they do so. So I think that's it in a nutshell. Thank you for your attention.
That was very useful. And indeed, we're going to hear a little bit more about that staff and volunteer staff care that we provide through Antares later. But we are very lucky that we have actually one of the colleagues who was deployed a little bit before. And I think maybe the experience of our colleagues speaks much more than Pampi's and I's beautiful presentations. So Brandon, can we welcome you here? Brandon is our colleague who's now working with WHO.
Yes.
And you deploy, tell us where do you deploy and when?
Yes. So my name is Brandon Gray. I deployed to Afghanistan starting in April of 2021, for about 2 months. I was hosted there by Action Against Hunger, as they're called in Afghanistan. And my role was to support the MHPSS technical working group there mostly on capacity building. So they wanted to do a series of trainings on the IASC guidelines for MHPSS. For program managers, how to use best practices in the programs that were happening there, but also on conducting MHPSS needs assessments, on building M&E systems, building a referral system among the different agencies. Yeah, so there was kind of a series of topics and focuses over the 2 months while I was there. And my role was for the entire technical working group. So I was hosted by Action Against Hunger, but I think the way the mechanism is set up is quite nice in that you are there somewhat independently, I felt like, or not independently, but neutrally to support all the different agencies in a technical working group.
Yeah, so that interagency role, it actually gives you a bit of freedom of action.
I think so. Yeah, to really serve the needs of the group entirely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Can I ask you a bit more personally, what did it mean for you to deploy it, and has it changed your career in any ways? Reflection.
That's a great
I can tap my ears.
Yeah. No, I think as you said, I work now for WHO in the mental health unit, and there are many experiences that shape how I see my work and how I work with countries and our work in emergencies. And this is one of the central ones, I would say, because it was a very close to my heart experience. Obviously, I went in April 2021. Everything changed in Afghanistan in a very substantial way in August that year. So many things changed, but also many people who I was working with during that deployment are still there. In fact, one of the current co-chairs of the technical working group was one of the participants and someone I worked very closely with. So I'd say that experience very much shaped who I am today professionally and perhaps personally. Even though it was a short time, it was a very rewarding experience for me, and I hope for what I work with as well.
I think I know for a fact that the group has benefited a lot from those trainings, and we actually had the opportunity to then deploy you again online, and also the country has been facing different new things, and we've been able to deploy new colleagues to keep on supporting Afghanistan. So thank you for that deployment and for sharing today a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have online our colleague Ernest. Ernest, are you online?
Yeah, hi, I'm online.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you. I kindly invite you to introduce yourself. Where are you now and with which agency are you hosted?
Thank you very much, Fami. I'm Ernest Anda. I was deployed in Eastern Chad to support the MHPSS responses to at the onset of the humanitarian crisis related to the armed conflict that blew up in Sudan since April 2023. So the main objective of my deployment was to support in setting up and strengthening the MHPSS coordination through the technical working group on MHPSS. I was hosted by UNHCR in Chad. And yeah, as Brandon said, my main work was to conduct need assessment and also to build capacity of partners who are intervening in MHPSS areas.
Thank you, Ernest. Ernest, we have many colleagues online, around 70 colleagues, and many colleagues here in the room, a mix of humanitarians, of funding agencies, of member agencies and government, UN and NGOs, big mix. Can you give the colleagues who might not be familiar with the world of MHPSS, what do you do when you wake up every day at work at this deployment? Do you treat patients? What do you do every day?
In Chad, specifically, what we do in Chad, it is a lot of things because we're plunged in a very remote area where we don't have the normal, what I call the normal facilities for living conditions. So you have, first of all, to support your colleagues, even if you are not deployed for that, you have to support your colleagues. And also you have to support the communities in the field. So what you do every day, you are plunged in the area where you have to, be alert and to be able to support at any position and at any time. That one puts you in a very, strange position that shape also your skills, in MHPSS. This is what I can say. But concerning this specific deployment, it was an amazing experience that helped to shape my skills and my experience in MHPSS coordination. This is what I can say so far. Thank you, Fami.
Thank you, Ernest. I was with you 3 months ago and we visited camps together. And I have to say, you managed in 3 months to be the most famous man in Chad. I sit with MSF, they know you. I sit with protection clusters, they know you. You managed to do the work really across clusters. But can you give me briefly one impact you think you made, a big difference you made in Chad during this tough deployment, and one impact this deployment had on you, a difference in your career, something you learned?
Thank you very much, Fami. First of all, when I reached Chad, it was a bit difficult to identify MHPSS actors. They were there, but the MCD, the head of health district, was asking me every time, but where are they? I don't see them. So my work was to identify them, to bring them together, and to work and to show off that MHPSS as a response in the humanitarian response. So we have to show off the MHPSS response by creating a coordination and also being able to give a voice of MHPSS partners. That one was a key action I put in the response. And today, even though I'm no longer there, people are continuing doing the meetings, and the group is still there. That is one of the things I'm proud of. In terms of, effect of this deployment on myself, I think I get more confidence in, intervening in such areas. So as a result, today UNHCR is in the process of creating a position, MHPSS position, in the staffing, so that to continue the work we have done in the field. That one, I think we can be proud of that and can celebrate as Marike says recently. Thank you.
Ernest, thank you and congratulations informally joining you in CR. I think, again, that's a successful outcome of a mission, means that you did a good job during your deployment. And we look forward to working with you with your new hat. I'm surprised you're having a good internet. You didn't give me this internet when I was with you. We have to discuss about this next time. And thank you so much, Ernest, for being
You are
with us.
welcome. You are welcome. Thanks.
Ernest. We were talking about Antares, and this is a session about mental health and psychosocial support. Of course, mental health and psychosocial support is for the affected population, but we would not be good mental health and psychosocial support experts if we didn't care deeply for the mental health and well-being of all of our colleagues. So it was very clear from the beginning that we wanted to have a mechanism that the employees could use to access at any point that we need it, during the deployment and after the deployment, including for some time. So we are very happy that we have our colleague Marta from Marta Tejema. I don't know. I never know if I say your surname well. I'm so sorry. From Antares, to tell us a little bit what is that work that you are doing with the RVO and IASC MHPSS reference group employees. Marta, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well, and I think we
Perfect.
can see you. Yes. Hi, good to see you.
Hi. Oh yeah, now I see myself very huge also. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for giving the floor to us. And it's very nice to digitally see so many of you that we also saw in Istanbul last year. So yeah, I also want to introduce you to my colleague, David. Together we are both the managing directors of Antares. So he will briefly introduce a little bit more about Antares for the people who don't know us yet. And then I will say a bit more about the specific work that we do for RVO. And then I think that's the time we have in this specific meeting. So David, can you take the floor? And then I think someone in Geneva has to spotlight you in order to do that.
Can people already hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. I hope everybody can hear me. Good afternoon for the people where it is afternoon. My name is David Veerman, as Mark already introduced me, Managing Director of Antares Foundation. And I would like to give you a little bit background of Antares Foundation so you have an idea what our organization is about. And we already this year we exist 25 years, which is of course worth a celebration, but also it's kind of sad that we are needed already for 25 years and it's increasing also. So hopefully in the future we won't be necessary anymore, and everything regarding psychosocial well-being is a-okay. Let's hope for the best. We are an independent NGO, and our mission is to support organizations and staff regarding psychosocial well-being. And in order to do so, we work on 3 levels. Actually, we support policy. So what we do with organizations is we support them in policy creation or developing in order to have good policy for psychosocial well-being within the organization. And what we also do is to train and advise leaders and managers on how to practically implement that policy. And of course, we also have individual support for staff where it's needed. Or as Marga already introduced, we also do debriefings for organizations in order to make sure that that people can have a reflection on how they've been doing during a field visit, which has been intense. So usually, well, everybody knows you work a lot and you make long hours, and sometimes it's easy to forget about yourself. So in the debrief, we always reflect on how people are doing and how they have been doing during the field, and if their coping strategies have been sufficient enough, or is there something that needs to be developed even a little bit more. So and the purpose for that is actually we try to have a systemic approach regarding our services, because we believe that if you support staff regarding psychosocial support, it has a big benefit for other missions also. So we don't like it if people have a negative experience where they or a difficult experience where they felt overwhelmed, or they had a lot of stress from, and they are end of mission, and they are contracted by another organization, and then they take that stress into another organization where actually some sort of a stress infection can happen, which is of course not intended, but sometimes that happens. And we believe that if you take care of people within your organization, you have the possibility to minimize that kind of going around of stress. So that was really short, a little bit of the introduction about Antares Foundation, and Marta will give you more info on the work we do with RVO.
Yes, thank you, David, and thank you for the introduction. And as Marijke already introduced, for RVO, we are part of the whole system of how the search, the MHPSS search system works within RVO. Our particular task is that in the preparation period, as Marijke explained, Antares Foundation gets a request for specific basic stress management training for the person who's being sent out, or who's being sent abroad. So what that entails is, depending on the knowledge, on the already existing knowledge, one of the associates, one of the psychologists from Antares trains this person specifically on how to look after yourself in the situation you're going to. So most of our experts have field experience themselves, or have very particular experience, so that they can relate to the person that they are connected with in order to prepare them for the employment that they're going to do, or the deployment they're going to do. Then there's also, during that basic stress management training, there's also a moment already to check in and to give the opportunity, if it's needed during deployment, to also get in touch with Antares Foundation. So this is part of the understanding we have with RVO, that we don't only train people in advance, we also have that appointment that if there's anything happening during this deployment, that can be when someone is away, it can be that at home something happens, and whatever it takes to keep someone mentally safe and sound during that deployment, we can, as Antares Foundation, also online, we do this then, of course, most of the time, support people during the deployment. And then the same goes for when someone comes back. So there's the preparation before deployment and the debrief. They're always there. That's part of our agreements with RVO. And then in addition, there's more additional services that can be provided if it's needed. And that's for everyone who's being sent within that system from RVO. It's always those two check-in moments for, where is someone going to, how is someone doing mentally, and how is someone looking after themselves. And it's regardless of the number of deployments that people have had, because we see several things. Sometimes people who are new or who will be on their first deployment, they come very prepared in a way because they know that they're going to a situation that they perhaps don't know yet, that might be stressful. So sometimes it's the people who have been on many deployments who think like, oh, I know this field, let's go. Those are the ones that are actually really also in need of that preparation, and to see that for us as human beings, these kind of deployments can be very intense regardless sometimes of the experience that we have. So we are very grateful to be able to be part of that, and it's a very beautiful collaboration that we have with RVO. So are there any questions regarding this? I'm not sure if we do have time for that.
Marta and David, we are grateful for your intervention and grateful for your amazing work, but I'm afraid we don't have time because we still have one more speaker and we need to take questions from the floor. I'm grateful to the great
perfect.
work that Antares is doing to the RVO network and to both of you for your time.
Thank you so much, Fahmi.
Thank you, colleagues. Great work. Thank you. If you want to go fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go together. We would like to explore also other networks. We are not the only network trying to do MHPSS and rapid deployments. I'm so grateful that my good colleague Anna invited me to UAE. Anytime you invite me to UAE, I'll be very happy to join you in consultation and meetings. I'm so grateful you invited. But tell us, what was the consultation in UAE about? And how did you collaborate with our mechanism on MHPSS rapid deployment? What did you want to over to?
There, okay.
As
I'll
you
just-
wish, Anna.
I
Thank
think
you.
I'll send here just so I can look at everybody. So, thank you, Fahmi. As I was saying, he was saying, I'm part of WHO also, but in a completely different unit. I work with the EMT Emergency Medical Teams Initiative, and there, the idea, the objectives of these initiatives is to build capacity for emergency surge response, and also define quality standards for the teams that will be deploying. And for some time, MHPSS has been on the table, of course, in the basic minimum standards reference document that we have within the EMT initiative. Of course, MHPSS is mentioned, and the need to develop a comprehensive approach for whatever team is deploying is there. But then what are the actual standards in MHPSS that need to be respected? What are the activities that these emergency medical teams would deliver in such an emergency response? And moreover, how they coordinate with these existing mechanisms that Fahmi and Carmen were mentioning, that already somehow structure the broader MHPSS response in an emergency. So this is what we're currently working with and working together. So both WHO units very closely aligning the existing standards in terms of quality and activities. So of course, preventing harm doing and all of the things that you might imagine that are core in this type of discussions, but also then including these aspects that are fairly new and recent, but that are becoming stronger and more present in the areas of response, so that the emergency medical teams at all levels are well informed and capable of also integrating themselves and making sure that all of the work is being coordinated with the broader MHPSS response network. So what Fahmi just mentioned, and to close it, really, we had just last week a meeting in Abu Dhabi. It was a consultation meeting with different experts in the MHPSS field. And the idea is to come up then with a specific technical note to guide EMT through this different objectives that we're just talking about, but then again, respecting all the international standards and whatever already exists for the MHPSS response. But this is something upcoming as a joint product.
Thank you, Anna. And your work is really the future of this type of initiatives, when member states, when countries have their own mechanism for rapid deployment internally and externally funded by the country itself. It will take years to develop, but we're so happy to go through this journey with you together as an IASC MHPSS reference group. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, colleagues. And we're going to move into the best part, which is listening from everybody else. I was just reflecting as Anna was talking, even having that broader conversation with IFRC, which has its own way of deploying MHPSS experts, or efforts like the UK, which has a rapid deployment system for public health emergencies. We're trying to really expand that conversation with existing mechanisms. We also are very interested in having more standby partners to be part of this initiative, so we can actually deploy broader and to more context. And of course, we want to have more organizations hosted. So everybody has a role to play. And I would like to open the floor a little bit. And of course, all the questions are very welcome as well. But maybe
to ask everybody to reflect a little bit, what can you do from your agency? If you're an NGO or an organization doing MHPSS work, what do you think, how could we collaborate? I don't know if Marieke, if you're still online, for example, how do you see the difference between these deployments and other sectors that RVO also deploys? And do you think, how do you see the partnerships with other standby partnerships? So I would like to open the floor in online. If you have any comments, just raise your hands and let us know that you have a comment. And also in the room, colleagues, if there's any reflection on what you heard. Yes, over to you.
Hi there. My name's Lauren Phillips. I work with the UN Volunteers Programme. Firstly, amazing initiative, great event. So inspiring to hear from the deployees. So just congratulations on that front. But excited to hear your questions then, because I mean, from UNV side, we of course deployed volunteers to serve with the UN system as well. And we've been experimenting both on the mental health and psychosocial support kind of stream of work, as well as on rapid deployments as well. And we've had, say, in emergency contexts like the Syria, Turkey earthquake, online volunteers that have been counselors supporting affected communities, deployed within a few hours. On the on-site, like in-person volunteers, it takes a bit longer. But I'm very keen to kind of hear from the people involved in setting this up. What's the management kind of investment required to manage that roster really well of these incredibly talented people? What's the kind of attrition rate, like in terms of people not being available? So I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that, and then also just the time frames as well. Like what's kind of broadly the experience in that regard? So that's kind of what I selfishly want to get out. But in terms of what we could offer, I'd love to have a conversation about how UN volunteers could support and complement the roster as well.
Absolutely, I'm already excited. And I would like to maybe add a comment on your question, and then of course open to RVO as well to let us know. From one of the aspects that you were asking, what Fami was mentioning about training, it's core.
Yeah.
Because we don't have so many experts, and a big factor for success is that someone gets then absorbed by the system, and then they have a work to do in a new place, and then there's one less person that we have in our database. So we need to really continue to do that capacity building. And I feel personally, Fami and I do feel very connected with the experts as well. So it's not just the trainings like the one that you were seeing, it's that capacity to have a bit of a mentoring type of availability, and that can be difficult sometimes if you don't have a lot of expertise. But I think that's for me something that is really important, and I can imagine with volunteers even more. Yeah, I don't know how many.
Thank you, Carmen, and thank you for your great question. UNV is also indeed one of the mechanisms because you can cover longer term deployments through one expert who have diversity of things he or she do in their profile. You asked about the duration. People are expected to be deployed on short notice. So we cannot ask for because that's a surge mechanism, it's a rapid deployment. So you cannot ask someone now and they say, I'll be available in October, for example. Yeah. People need to be deployed. Some of our deployments were very successful and people getting deployed within 48 hours. We had that during the Ukraine response in neighboring countries, but some of our deployments might take weeks because you are bound to visa issues and similar. These are deployments for 3 months, up to 6 months maximum. And the salary is paid through the Ministry of Economic Affairs, through RVO, funded by the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, with USAID, BHIA contributing to the capacity building of the roster as a contributing donor. But now we are also starting deployments which are for 2 weeks rather than for 3 months. You get some type of profile also within 3 to 6 months, people in between jobs, or people who are looking for jobs, or people who are willing to move from a 3 months to a 3 months deployment, but also people who are willing to get into immediately an opportunities that open within an agency. But the 2 weeks deployment, you get people who are in a good job, but they want to take a 2 weeks leave. This is a different HR human resource profile from the ones in 3 months. I think we need both.
I wanted to check. Yes, please go ahead, and then check also if RVO has.
No, thanks a lot for the presentations. It's actually, my name is Heide Rida. I work for IOM and MHPSS here in Geneva. It's actually quite exciting to see because I remember we had the very first search support candidate actually coming to South Sudan back in 2020
Yeah.
and helping us through the COVID period to deal with the working group. And now so many things have happened since. I was just wondering about the training that you provide to the coordinators. How much does it also include national staff who might eventually take over the role of technical working group lead? Because that was something I saw in South Sudan, or like I heard from other colleagues that yes, the internationals come in and we have this challenge of funding for the technical working group coordination. But sometimes we just then train those people from the agencies, but not necessarily with the partners on the ground. So that was really one question I had: how far are we there, or has that changed? And then another thing I would be interested to hear from you is, I was very excited to see this broadening of scope of thematic areas where like the search support could be like a factor. From coordination now also going to not just assessment, mapping and so on, which is crucial, and like setting up the technical working groups, but also on the thematic areas. We talked about peace building and DDR areas where we really look into getting more specialized expertise, and we're working in all those fields. It's just, I know it's about humanitarian context, but we also work across the nexus, and we're dealing more and more with those areas that we have to bring together. So I would just be curious to hear, did you deploy anyone in that field? Was there a request? Because it's in the list, but I don't know what happened in reality on the ground.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hildegard. I'll start with the first question because you're absolutely right. And actually, one thing that we noticed, I think the short period is a big difficulty from the beginning. And it's actually something that we can use a lot because we have that pressure element of that. We will not be able to extend past this time. And it's true that sometimes what happens is that the agency identifies resources to hire the person. But what has happened more is that then the expert has very strongly shifted the focus in building the capacity of identifying someone at local agencies that would be taking over them and working with them. So I was just taking a few notes, thinking Somalia. We have a national colleague who was trained by the previous deployment that we had. In Gaza is the same thing.
Romania,
Venezuela, Romania, Afghanistan. I would say the majority of those, if it wasn't an existing technical working group that requested for something specific, if it was more strengthening coordination, that has been a big element. So if we see there's a tendency of like, oh, let's maybe continue another, then we redirect them, say, no, let's change the activities and the priorities of the deployment, and let's make priority one, that sustainability, and to have someone who is ready to continue after the person. And on the second one, I would actually like to check to maybe inform on the colleague who's helping us in opening, because we not yet have some of these deployments, to be honest. And it is part of the reason to share that list. We're kind of like sharing over and over again, because I think there's also a lot of, oh, this is for coordination, and we need to give it a little bit of visibility that is not that only anymore, and we're very proud of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. I had a great question. And the 2 weeks deployments are difficult ones because the attractiveness is that you get a person with you for 3 months, and the human resource, the salary is covered by the donor generously, and with thanks to the donor for doing that. And then you try to build resources to create a position. But the 2 weeks is doable by agents. What's attractive here is that we're doing 2 weeks in specialities which are extremely rare: older adults and MHPSS, peace building and MHPSS, DDR, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, and MHPSS. And it has to be inter-agency. We historically had, Brandon deployment with ACF in 2021 was an inter-agency capacity building. We did have, but it's sporadic, less than the most frequent items that we used to have, which is coordination. I think now by trying to offer something attractive in these 2 weeks, which is an asset that agents is difficult to find, which also would be another asset for the system, because this expertise is extremely rare. National staff. they would not be a candidate for the roster member training because it's a roster member training. We select people who join this to be actually deployed rapidly. So we change the scope of training if we decide to include, but we include them in other types of training. The deployment itself is source of training for them, but also in-country trainings that Carmen and I do all the time in capacity building to technical working groups through deployment is one of the and in agency-specific trainings that IOM or WHO or UNICEF or SAFE will do for its own stuff as well. We take one more question, and I think we, sorry, Maya.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we also have 2 questions online, so perhaps we can take those as well.
Yeah.
Would you like to take them now? First of all, to acknowledge everyone that is online, we have people from Libya, from Brussels, from Syria, Central African Republic, Somalia, Brazilian Red Cross, GIZ, IMC, UN Women. I can go on, but
And do they like the session? What has
hopefully. Give me a thumbs up. Yes, so there are 2 questions. I will mention them both. From Endel from IMC, thank you very much for the orientation. How is the process to be included in the search team? That's the first one. The second one is from Yaret Hunde. Is there any approach of deploying experts in a consortium manner? I mean, sharing expenses among partners.
I think Marika is the most adequate to tell us how to join, to let us know how experts can join the experts database.
Thank you, Carmen. Well, that's very easy. I will share a link with you, which leads you to our website, to the website from RVO. And there you see a button, and then you can register yourself. You can upload your CV, which we need for the applications. And yeah, that's it. Then you're registered, and then you will receive our calls for trainings and our calls for the open positions. And then you can apply, and you can contact us also via our common inbox mhpss@rvo.nl. So that's it.
Quite straightforward. Everybody winking here. You can join. And the other one was
The second one was about the
interesting question.
sharing expenses among
It's a great idea. To have to say that when we come up with this idea by having a partner to whom we are very grateful, RVO, who classically work on WASH, and we build on the modules they have for WASH to do MHPSS, we spend a bit of time. The group has spent years literally trying to find the best mechanism. It's an idea to consider, and there is a bit of cost sharing, I have to say, although the agency hosting the expert actually do not pay for their salary, but actually they pay logistics. For example, Ernest that we heard today, every time he needs to go to the field, based on the regulation in Chad, he has to go with military escort, and he has to go with safety and security. That costs the agency every time he would leave the camp. Actually, some costs on the agencies, such as UNHCR, would cover that cost, giving him a desk, giving him a laptop, giving him a phone, and cover his communication. Isabel, you want to say something?
Yes, no, I just wanted to add to what was just said about the link for people who would be interested. I propose that we put it on the HNPW page of the session,
yeah,
so that people looking at the recording or people here in the room who would be interested perhaps in applying and also have access to it, because the chat will not necessarily be visible to all afterwards. And then same for your PowerPoint, which was very great.
Indeed, that's a great idea, and you see, we should do this indeed. And our contact details are here, and RVO contact details. If you agree, Carmen, I think we can proceed for closing the session.
Absolutely, yes. With a big thank you, and maybe I'll still leaving a question or a thought in the air for all of you. As I was saying, if you are an ADO that is engaged in MHPSS, and you think you could be hosting, or if you know of NGOs that could be hosting, if you are a standby partner who is interested in expanding into MHPSS, if you are a donor agency, any role that you have, if there's one thing we want you to take out of this session, is that this mechanism is open to continue to expand, to continue to offer very, very needed mental health and psychosocial support everywhere where it's necessary. So it's an encouragement for everybody to join the MHPSS train in any way, and more specifically even with the mechanism. If there's anything we can do to support that, send us an email, and we'll be very happy to stay online. I want to say thank you so much before handing over to Fami, to all of you here in the room, and hope you're having a wonderful networking and partnershiping week. We are looking forward to do that with you. I want to really thank you, all of our speakers and contributors online and face to face. And thank you, Maya, so much for all of your fantastic organization. And thank you, Fami.
Thank you, Carmen. Thanks to you as well. I'd like to thank Maya. I'd like to thank Isabel. Without both of you, this session would not have been possible. So we are so grateful for the IC Secretariat for making it possible, and for you, Maya, for all the hard work in getting colleagues from the field or coordinating all the preparations that was required to do this. Honestly, I was speaking a few weeks ago with my family, telling them during my next leaves, I'd like to join the surge mechanism and go and do deployments. I did not sound very popular at home, I was telling you, but I encourage you. If you are an expert, join the mechanism. If you are a donor, discuss with us and contribute to the mechanism. The funding goes to salaries of experts in the field, not to respective agencies. And if you are a humanitarian agencies, communicate with us. We will be very happy to emphasize the message kindly shared by Carmen. Thank you, colleagues. We really appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues online. Thank you so much. This is chocolate. Take a picture. Leave it there for a little bit. Yeah. Always fearful to put your email in a big pocket.
I want to go to the hospital.